This show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research Incorporated, a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisor representative, Cambridge Investment Research Advisors Incorporated, a registered investment advisor. Financial planning services through Andover Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Cambridge and Andover Advisory Group are not affiliated. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice.
Good morning, Justin. I want to thank you for your hard work. The information is a big help, and I appreciate what you did.
Enjoy the show.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you for the information.
You're very welcome.
Okay, Jeff.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
You're right on the money, Jeff. How are you doing this morning?
Thank you.
Well, those are good questions. Hopefully I help.
Yes, thank you so much.
You're very welcome. You're going to hear stuff here that you don't hear anywhere else on radio.
And don't forget it.
Welcome to another edition of Talk Money. If you're joining us for the very first time, let me introduce myself. My name is Jeffrey Shank. I'm a chartered financial consultant and the owner of Andover Advisory Group, which is a registered investment advisor. And for over 25 years, I've provided effective financial advice to individuals and businesses. Thanks so much for tuning in. Let me just mention that our mission here on Talk Money is to improve your money IQ. And we do that in various ways, providing you with information that can help you to make certain decisions about your money. And that could vary. That could be anything from taxes to life insurance to investment planning. And so hopefully the information that we provide you here will be of some assistance. And of course, if you want to follow up on any of this information, feel free to call us at a toll-free number or send me an email, jeff@talkmoneyradio.com. Or you can just send us a private message right through the Facebook portal. Good morning, Lou. How are you this morning?
Doing very well. How about you today?
I know you're lying. You said you were sick. You said you're battling a cold, so
I have a cold. Yeah.
Don't lie.
It's okay. We'll all live.
I would highly recommend you get tested for coronavirus, but that's entirely up to you.
So the fact that I can still smell isn't enough evidence.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm not the expert in that particular area, but it's funny because
I'm checking every couple of hours. Let me tell you.
Because I had something planned for today's show, and I thought that I was going to have to change it all up at the last second, but it looks like the markets are recovering a bit from the big sell-off on Friday.
Yeah.
It was funny because
this new variant has me nervous from a world operational standpoint, because it seems to be an interesting threat. Or people seem to be reacting to it in a way that makes me nervous.
Well, the thing is, we have the benefit of experience now.
Yeah.
And so if something like this happens again, people are going to be a little bit more cautious, right? Government officials are going to be a little bit more cautious. And the reaction time was much swifter in this particular case, shutting down travel from South Africa specifically, which a lot of people think is a bad idea. But hey, maybe it's not such a bad idea.
The same people who did it thought it was a bad idea when the last guy did it. So
that's a great point.
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking about about March of 2020, and when the COVID-19 virus was just starting to emerge as a story, and I was on the show. You asked me, Lou, in the context of the markets and the reaction to what was happening and the possibility of a economic shutdown, and you asked me what I thought, what the time span might be.
Right.
How long is this gonna? That was how I don't forget exactly how you worded it, but you asked me what the.
Well, that was back in the day of 2 weeks to flatten the curve.
Right, exactly, and so at the time, and we actually talked about it a little bit earlier than that, and we were comparing it to past viruses, and of course, this has surpassed any of those prior epidemics or pandemics. And you asked me, how long I thought this might impact the markets, and my response, and I'm paraphrasing here, was that it would depend on how long or how severe the pandemic became, or if it even became a pandemic, because at that point, I don't think that we had officially
Yep.
recognized that it was a pandemic. And my response was, it depends on testing and scaling up the testing regime, and that was the key.
Yep.
Because that's what that was really what we needed to do in order to identify the problem and get our resources together and applied to those areas of the world, really, where the virus was starting to spread. And to date, Lou, we have not done enough in terms of testing, and I'm hoping that will change in the near future. Now, we've come a long way. There's actually there's home testing now that you can buy at your local pharmacy.
Yep.
And that's certainly helpful, but I still don't think there's enough emphasis on testing. In fact, South Africa basically was punished because of all the testing that they're doing and all the
Well, there you go. Yeah.
yeah. So maybe that's going to deter at least governments from releasing information. Maybe not from doing the testing and the research, but
Right.
anyway. So it looks like the markets are starting to rebound slightly from the big sell-off on Friday. It was a shortened day. It was pretty dramatic. Something that we've not seen in a very, very long time on a Friday after Thanksgiving. But it looks like cooler heads, at least for now, are starting to prevail, and at least the indication is that at least the U.S. markets are going to be in positive territory when they open at 9:30.
It's funny. All I read over the weekend, I was chuckling about it a little bit. All I read over the weekend was, "What are you buying on Monday?" And it's funny. People reacted that way to it. Gave me the idea it was going to be a little bit short-lived, and that was kind of calming. But the last time when we went through it in March of 2020, the market dip was relatively quick, even though the news with testing and whatever we were doing, the news on COVID just got progressively worse. But the market still recovered in the face of what was going on. Because again, we started at the time the market dipped, we were still in the 2 weeks to flatten a curve stage. And then, we learned, we began to see as it went along, this was going to be, we were going to be in this for a while. And yet the market still recovered.
Yes, exactly. Quite surprisingly, still scratch my head over that, to be quite honest with you. But I was working on Friday, Lou. I wasn't just an observer, and we did actually put some money to work on Friday.
Yeah.
So the question that I'm asked quite often in the context of retirement planning, Lou, is, what's better? What should I be doing? Should I be putting money into an IRA, or should I be putting it into my company's 401k plan? And so I thought that it would be this would be an opportunity to talk a little bit about retirement planning. What's the best way the best vehicles, I guess, to plan for retirement, and look at compare.
Right.
An individual retirement account with a company-sponsored retirement plan. And this company-sponsored retirement plan, we know it mostly as a 401k, but if you work for a nonprofit, it might be a 403b. If you work for a government agency, it might be a 457 plan. So depending on the type of employer you have, that determines what sort of plan they can actually set up for you and allow you to defer some of your wages into a retirement plan. And the rules are different between an IRA and a 401k. But first, I just wanted to show you this graphic that I saw, and again, I was kind of surprised at these numbers. But if you look at it, this is the percentage of households that actually own tax advantage retirement savings accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest percentage here, right, 36%, 1/3 of employees, or 1/3 of the workforce, has no IRA or employer-sponsored plan.
Yeah.
Is that just kind of a shocking number? I
No.
mean, if I told you that, if I asked you the question, what number would you have come up with?
I would have thought that was low, actually. You know,
Oh, really? Is that right? You thought it would be higher than that?
Yeah.
Jeez.
There's a lot of people out here working just to keep, fuel oil in the tanks and food on the table and a roof over it.
and don't have the extra the discretionary funds to put into a retirement account. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Or at least in their perception, they don't.
Yeah. Well, listen, I along with the rest of the financial services industry are going to take responsibility for this this failing, because if 1/3, 1 out of every 3 people, has no account where they're putting money in. Now they might have an account where they're saving, right, but don't have a dedicated retirement account that they're putting money into for the long term. I think I think we've failed the consumer on that particular issue. But the good news is almost 1/3 have both an IRA and an employer-sponsored plan. About 25% or 27% actually are investing just in an employer-sponsored plan and don't have an IRA to complement that.
Mhm.
And just about 6%, the smallest percentage, don't have a company-sponsored plan, but they are saving for retirement in an IRA. So I thought it would be a good idea to kind of compare IRAs and 401ks. And so I guess the first place to start would be with contribution limits.
Mhm.
And so I've got another slide here to show you. Hopefully you can see that all right. I might be able to enlarge it just a bit. There we go. All right. So every year, the IRS sets the limits on how much money can go into these retirement funds. Now, the reason why they're responsible for it is because there's a tax impact of putting money away in these plans. And so, geez, you don't want to be able to put all your money into it, right?
Right.
That would be a bad thing. So they put limits on
For the
how
government,
how much you can put in, and every year they change it. So for the current 2021 calendar year, the maximum you can put into a 401k or a 403b, a company-sponsored retirement plan that you can defer. There's higher limits if your company wants to put money in for you. But the most that you can say, hey, take it out of my paycheck and put it into this plan, most is $19,500 if you're less than age 50.
Mhm.
If you're 50 or older, you can actually put in an additional $6,500 for a total of $26,000. By the way, that number is going up $1,000 for the base contribution for everybody, and the catch-up is going to stay the same for next year, for 2022. The most you could put into an IRA, Lou, is $6,000, and for the longest time it was $2,000.
Yeah.
And they never changed it, and that was the number that they had in the 70s. They finally realized that's ridiculous. They started indexing it a little bit, but you can see here that the number next year is going to be the same as the number this year, $6,000. And again, if you are 50 or older, you can put in a whole extra $1,000. That's true for this year and true for next year.
Thank God.
And the numbers for any IRA, whether it's traditional or Roth, the limits are the same: $6,000 for a regular contribution, $1,000 for a catch-up. Now, the timing of these contributions do vary depending on what type of plan you're putting money into. For example, an IRA, you can actually make contributions to an IRA account up to the filing deadline for your tax return in the following year. So if you wanted to, you could assess the situation on April 1st, decide that you're going to make a contribution to an IRA and do that for 2021.
Right.
What that means is that you could actually make, at that point, you could make a $12,000 contribution if you're under age 50, a $14,000 contribution if you're over 50 or over, because you would apply one of those contributions for 2021, one for 2022, assuming that you hadn't already made that 2021 contribution.
Okay,
Can't-
so those limits
can't
are
double up.
on the tax deduction as opposed to actual calendar year limits.
Okay, so we're going to get into that in just a
Yeah.
second, but the ability to take a tax deduction depends. It depends on your financial circumstances.
Yep.
Okay, so let's just talk about that just for a second. Oh, the timing of the contributions to a 401k. You can't make any contributions to a company-sponsored plan. You individually cannot defer salary next year and say it was deducted this year.
I see.
So your contributions to a company-sponsored plan, it has to come out of your paycheck, and it has to come out of wages. You can't write a check and put it into your 401k plan. Not allowed.
Okay. Yeah.
And you can't make those contributions beyond the beginning of the following year. So whether or not you get a tax deduction, again, it depends. Specifically for an IRA, a tax deduction is available if you make a contribution to a traditional IRA. A Roth IRA, you don't get the tax deduction. But when you pull money out of a Roth IRA, it's tax-free. When you pull money out of a traditional IRA, it's taxable, right? So you have to decide what's best for you. But the amount that you can deduct for a traditional IRA contribution depends on a couple of things. First of all, there's an income threshold. If you exceed a certain income, adjusted gross income, you start to lose your tax deduction.
Mm-hmm.
If you are covered by an employer-sponsored plan. So if there are those 37% or so that have both an IRA and a 401k,
Right.
then your tax deduction is limited if you're covered by both. And it could be zero at some point. So it starts at a certain income level, it starts to go away, and you can only deduct a certain portion of your contribution until it eventually goes to zero for certain adjusted gross incomes.
Okay.
With a 401k, that's not true. Everything that you put into a 401k traditional is taxed pre-tax. You don't pay taxes on it.
Right.
So it reduces your your taxable income on your W-2. Instead of taking a tax deduction like a traditional IRA, it's reduced automatically. And by the way, that's for both federal and state. A traditional contribution to an IRA contribution to a traditional IRA is not deductible typically, or at least for Massachusetts residents anyway, not deductible. Which, by the way, creates a whole planning opportunity that a lot of people don't realize when they start taking money out.
Well,
yeah.
Yep.
We'll talk about that some other day. And so the Roth version of the 401k is also available for most employers. So if you don't know whether or not your employer has a Roth option and you'd like to do that, ask the question. And the same thing applies. It is not a pre-tax contribution. So it doesn't reduce your wages, doesn't reduce your W-2 wages, taxable wages.
Mm-hmm.
With a Roth IRA contribution, there is a limit on whether or not you can actually put money in. So it's not a pre-tax or a tax deductible contribution, but they do put a limit on how much you can contribute depending on your adjusted gross income. To the point where once it exceeds a certain level, you cannot make a Roth contribution at all. Not true with a employer-sponsored Roth option. So a Roth 401k contribution or deferral from your paycheck is okay. Doesn't matter what your income is. I had that question come up just in the last week or so, because the employee was thinking, wait a second, I don't know. Can I do a Roth? I'm going to get a big bonus. Can I put the money into it? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There is no income limitation. It's only for individual or Roth IRA type accounts. So you can see that there are some distinct advantages of using your employer-sponsored plan for your retirement savings. Higher limits, higher tax deduction, or higher tax savings. Let's put it that way. And for the Roth anyway, no limit on how much you can put away, up to, of course, the statutory maximum.
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So the other thing you have to think about too is that if you set up, if you're employed, your company has a 401k and they match your contribution to the plan, you don't have a similar type of arrangement with an IRA.
Right.
The government isn't matching any of your contributions.
Wouldn't that be great?
And your employer is not either, and you don't have that option right now.
Yep.
For your employer to match your contribution to your own individual retirement account. So that actually does give the 401k a distinct advantage. Even if it was tax deductible, even if you weren't going to contribute up to $26,000, the fact that you can get a matching contribution, that's huge.
Yeah,
that's huge. Right?
Free money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Here's where the IRA has some advantages, and that's investment flexibility. So for your individual retirement account, your what you can invest in your individual retirement account is almost unlimited. There are a few exceptions, like collectibles. You can't buy art and put it in your IRA account. You can't buy coins and put it into your IRA account. But just about everything else you can do, except you can't take a loan against your IRA. If you try to take a loan against your IRA, or you used it for collateral, let's say, for a loan, it's considered a deemed distribution of the assets, the entire account.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah.
So what that means is that you can't margin your investments in an IRA account. So you can't set up a margin account and buy stocks by using on margin. So, but everything else you can pretty much you can invest in your IRA. Not true of your company sponsored retirement plan for a lot of reasons. They put limits on what you are able to invest in, because the Department of Labor puts a fiduciary obligation on the employer.
Oh, okay.
To make sure that the investments are sound, that the expenses are low, and if somebody ends up losing money and you haven't done your job as the sponsor of the plan, you could get sued.
Yeah.
And so they put limits on what you can invest in. And so the IRA gives you a lot more investment flexibility. With the 401k, you have to look at just that limited investment lineup that's available to you. Most plans allow you a lot of flexibility in terms of changing your investment strategy, but others do put restrictions on how often you can change, because they don't want you using it as a trading platform. They want you to invest that money for retirement, keep it there, and if you do start to trade more frequently or change your investment strategy more frequently, they might stop you from doing that, or maybe even charge you a fee for doing that. One caveat in this particular area, Lou, is that you are in a lot of plans able to set up what they call a brokerage window. And so if your plan allows it, and it's mostly larger companies that allow this to happen, if your company allows it, you can actually set up a separate account, a brokerage account within your 401k plan, transfer funds or even contribute funds out of your paycheck into that account. And now that gives you a lot more investment options than you had available to you before. Similar
Interesting.
to an IRA. Yeah, they call it a
Yeah.
brokerage window. Each plan calls it something a little bit different, but basically that's what it is, a self-directed brokerage account within your
Are there limits
401k.
about how much of your 401k you can put in there?
There can be, yes.
Yeah.
Some plans allow you, hey, you can take the whole thing if you want.
Yeah.
Other plans say, oh, only 50%. Other plans don't allow you to put money directly into it out of your paycheck. You have to transfer it from the traditional, if I call it that, a traditional account over to the brokerage window, the self-directed brokerage account.
Right.
And if that's something that you're not sure of, you can ask your employer whether or not that option is available to you. Typically, it's available in what they call a summary plan description, SPD. And so that's something that is available to you, and you can find out if that option is in your plan. And it can be a great way to diversify your portfolio, especially if you have a lot of money invested. For a lot of people, their 401k plan is next to their house is probably one of the largest investments that they own. And limiting it to just that, list of 12 funds or 20 target date funds does put some limitations on how much you can diversify in your overall portfolio. That's something that we look at a lot with our clients, making sure that we do know if they have that available to them, and helping them to take advantage of it. And then the other area that we should compare is liquidity. And what I mean is, what if you need the money?
Yep.
Right. So if you have a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA and you've been putting money into it and it's grown to some value and you need it, it's yours. You can pull it out anytime you want. Now, not without tax consequences necessarily.
Sure.
But you could just withdraw it. Remember I said you can't take a loan.
Yep.
That's your only option of getting access to those funds, are to pull money out. And if you're under age 59 and a half, there can be additional penalties involved, although there are some exceptions to that penalty. The one that comes to mind immediately is the ability to pull out, I think it's up to $10,000 for a down payment on your first home. So you can pull money out of your IRA, and if it's a Roth IRA, since it wasn't pre-tax, there's actually some money there you can pull out tax-free anyway. And even if there was a little taxable amount, no penalty if it's to pay for your first home. You can always, there's also an exemption for college expenses as well. But that's something we can talk about if it is impacting your situation. And with a 401k, you can't just take money out of your employer-sponsored plan. Simple as that. Until you reached a certain age at the minimum, a retirement age or some predetermined age, typically it's 55 or 59 and a half, or maybe even 65, depending on the plan. You just can't pull money out. There are exceptions for what they call hardship withdrawals, but you have to show that you've actually had a hardship in order to pull that out. There was an exception during the pandemic in 2020, what they call coronavirus distributions. So you could just pull it out if you needed the money without having all these having to go through all these hoops in order to get it out.
Right.
But there is an alternative, and you can take, if your plan allows it, a loan against your 401k assets, typically up to 50% of the value, or a maximum of $50,000. So there's a way that so the 401k gives you some liquidity, although limited, but there's no tax consequence of taking a loan. So you take the money out as a loan, and then you pay it back, typically out of your paycheck, on a regular basis. So if you need some money in the short term, a loan against your 401k can be the solution. I would exhaust other options first prior to deciding to take a loan, but it is there in case of emergencies. But you do have to pay it back.
Yes.
And typically it's within 5 years. So your payments have to be paid on a regular basis over a 60-month period, essentially.
They pay attention to your repayment schedule?
If you're working, if your employer, if it's an employer-sponsored plan, then your employer is going to set it up automatically, or the administrator of the plan is going to set it up automatically to deduct that payment out of your paycheck. You can pay it back sooner, but you have to pay it in minimum installments, and it has to be withdrawn from your paycheck.
Yep.
So you don't have to worry about skipping a payment. Now, the problem with that, Lou, is that if you leave your employer for any reason, including retirement, and you have a loan balance on your 401k, you either have to pay it all back within a certain time period of terminating your employment. I'm going to say 90 days. I'm not sure if that's the number. Or it's considered a deemed distribution. So you borrowed the money, didn't have to pay taxes on it, you've been paying it back. Now you've got a loan balance. If you don't pay off that loan balance after you terminate your employment, you can't continue to pay the loan after you're no longer employed, because you're no longer a participant in the plan.
That's inconvenient.
Can be very inconvenient, especially if the termination was involuntary. You didn't have a chance to plan for it, right?
Yeah.
And so whatever the balance is considered a deemed distribution. And if you're under age 59 and a half, guess what? Penalties. So that can be a problem. So, if you do take a loan, choose that wisely. And so as you can see, there are some advantages, disadvantages of both. And I think, as I was going through this and putting this all together, I was thinking, those 37% of the folks that have both an IRA and a 401k,
yeah,
that's probably the best solution. Take advantage of both if you can.
Keep all your options open.
Keep all your options open. Give you nice, because the IRA can give you some advantages for liquidity purposes, for example, or just investment flexibility. But the 401k has much larger contribution levels. It can be pre-tax regardless of your income, and you can do a Roth 401k regardless of your AGI, where you can't do that with a traditional IRA. So, but again, the IRA can be, or it just a supplement. So you're maxing out your employer-sponsored plan, and you still want to save for retirement. Guess what? IRA would be the way to go.
Very good.
Yeah. Hey, so we probably should take a short break here, Lou. And when we come back, we're going to talk about the stock market, and we're going to talk about valuation of the stock market, or valuation of stocks. And there's a lot of different measures you can use, but we're going to talk about the one that's most used, and that's what they call PE, or price earnings ratio. And I want to kind of give you the basics of price earnings ratios and talk to you about how I think it's important in the context of the current market.
Whether you're saving money for your children's education, preparing for retirement, or deciding on the right life insurance plan, you can count on the professionals at Andover Advisory Group. Established in 1996, our company is responsible for providing financial planning services to individuals seeking sound financial advice. We create a comprehensive financial plan that serves as a framework for organizing the pieces of your financial life so that you can focus on your goals and understand what it takes to reach them. And a financial plan can help you prioritize. For example, how saving for college might impact your ability to save for your retirement. Having a clear perspective will allow you to pick the right strategies and confidently choose suitable products and services. Best of all, you'll have the peace of mind that comes from knowing that your financial life is on track. Call us at 978-691-5005 to book your free initial consultation. That's 978-691-5005. Hi, this is Jeffrey Shank, a chartered financial consultant and the host of the Talk Money Show. I've been helping my clients for more than 30 years, and now I'm going to help you. Join us to learn about the financial issues that concern you the most. You'll hear from the experts on a range of topics, get some great ideas, and it's all designed to help you make more out of your money. So tune in to Talk Money right here on Eagle News Radio.
Welcome back. Hey, so I just checked the markets during the break, though,
Yep.
and it looks like we're recovering a lot of what was lost on Friday. Not 100%, but a big chunk nonetheless.
Saw those guys who were yelling, "What are you buying on Monday?" Yeah, we're on top of it.
Yeah. And so that's a good backdrop for what we're going to discuss next, and that's PE ratios. PE stands for price earnings, and it's one way of valuing stocks and comparing one investment with another to kind of get a feel for whether or not that investment has value, or if the price is consistent with the value of that particular investment, that particular company that you're investing in. There's a lot of different ways you value companies, but the one that's used most often in most discussions, and it's published on just about every stock that you get a quote for, is the price earnings. And what we're talking about is the price in the market for that particular stock as compared to the earnings that company is getting. Now, not dividends, that would be a different ratio,
Right.
but the earnings according to generally accepted accounting principles, right?
Yeah.
GAAP. That's the acronym GAAP that you hear a lot, potentially, and so it's a method for comparing one stock with or one investment with another investment to see if maybe, because the price is the price, right? So the price of a stock that's $7 a share, the price of a stock that's $500 a share, or even $1,000 a share, you can't say that $7 stock is underpriced, because you can't look at that in a vacuum. You have
Right,
to.
because
Yeah,
one is an indicator of current performance, and the other one is an indicator of.
well, it's just the price.
I'm sorry.
It's just the price. It's just the
It's
price.
just the price. Yeah.
It's just the price, right? So a stock that's selling for $1,000 a share could actually be more undervalued than a stock that's selling for $7 a share. It's just the price.
Right.
And so by using these valuation methods, you can better compare the relativeness of those prices. Okay.
Yep.
And so and again, I just wanted, this is just a primer. Just want to make sure that you understand the basics of this, because I'm going to make a point here. Okay. But when you look at those PE ratios, couple things that you need to understand, and one is forward versus trailing. So we're looking at the earnings of the company. We're comparing the price to the earnings. Well, what are we talking about? Are we talking about the most current earnings? Are we talking about the last 12 months of
Right.
earnings? Or are we talking about an earnings ratio that is being projected into the future? And so you always want to make sure when you're looking at PE, and again, comparing one investment with another, you need to know what they are actually measuring. And typically, when you get a stock quote and you see that PE ratio, it's going to be trailing earnings. And typically, it's going to be the latest 12 months, keeping in mind that most companies are reporting their earnings on a quarterly basis. So really 4 quarters, the last 4 quarters of earnings, which is based on actual results, right?
Yeah.
So that's based on actual. So that PE number is based on reality.
Okay.
However,
but I heard typically, which surprises me. Under that label, what other things are possible?
Forward projections of earnings.
Okay.
Right? Where,
yeah.
And this happens a lot. When I hear this a lot, when people are talking about a particular stock, they talk about forward earnings. And that is kind of important when you're trying to evaluate whether or not you want to make an investment. You want to kind of get an idea of what things are going to look like in the future, because you're not investing in the past, you're investing in the future, right?
Yep.
So but a lot of times when they say, oh, it's undervalued, they're talking about their estimation of forward earnings, which hasn't happened yet.
Right.
And a lot could change that.
Yes.
And those estimates are constantly being updated based on the current situation and information that's coming from the company, and how the economy is doing and where interest rates are going, that sort of thing.
Let
But
me ask though, when you go to your favorite site to look at a stock, for example, or an equity, when you get that price earnings ratio, do you know which one it is, or are they?
it says so. It should say right in the right in that number somewhere somehow whether or not it's trailing or forward. But typically, in a quote that you get online, it's going to be trailing.
Yeah.
That's going to be the automatic. Usually, when we're talking about forward, it's because it's an analyst who's doing or assessing the PE and using a forward-looking calculation.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of important.
Yeah.
And so you have to make sure that you're comparing apples with apples. In other words, so if you're comparing one stock with another, you can't compare if one is being projected and one is based on past earnings. Then you can't use those numbers for comparison. You want to make sure that you're comparing the earnings exactly the same. Right?
One is data, the other one is a guess, an educated guess, but a guess nonetheless.
It is right. That's exactly right. Yeah, good point. Right. Yeah. But what is also important, and by the way, you can get a PE on individual stocks, and you can get a PE on an index, because all the stocks that make up the index have profits, or typically have profits. And so what happens is a price earnings ratio is actually assigned to the market, like the S&P 500, for example, right? But here's the problem. If you're looking at a particular stock and you're looking at a PE of, let's say, 15, and the index or the market's PE is 20, let's say, and you're saying, oh well, that stock looks like it's undervalued, you could be making a big mistake, because you don't want to be comparing PEs necessarily with the overall market. You want to be comparing with the peers in their respective sector of the economy. And I actually have a slide, Lou, that shows different industries, basically the broad sectors of the S&P 500,
mm-hmm.
and the price earnings ratio within those sectors. And again, there we go. And so you can see on the low end, you've got energy. And this is, by the way, is the end of as of October 1st
mm-hmm.
of this year. So it's fairly recent. And obviously no adjustment for what happened on Friday. And in fact, energy has rebounded quite a bit. So you might actually see the energy sector having a higher PE today than it did previously. But you can see on the low end, you've got energy. And then financials, interestingly enough, is in second place. Materials, healthcare, utilities, and then if you go to the other end and you look at consumer discretionary or technology, you can see the within the price earnings ratio of the market, which, by the way, is shown here on this slide at 20.1.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were comparing a particular company in the tech sector with the and it had a 25 PE, let's say, the same as the sector, and you compared that to the S&P 500, and you made you drew the conclusion that, hey, this is overvalued, that would be a mistake.
Yep.
You really want to be comparing PEs within the their peer group. And by the way, these are broad sectors. You can actually narrow it down within each of these sectors or subsectors, which also have varying PE averages.
Right.
So, for example, computer technology might have a higher PE than the overall industry itself.
Or energy harvesting versus distribution, or
yes,
storage, or
yes,
infrastructure.
Right. Yeah. And by the way, typically, price earnings ratios are higher for what they call growth companies that are growing fast, because people are willing to pay a little bit more for that growth, that future growth.
Right.
And the opposite is true for those more mature companies that aren't growing very fast, but they're great companies. They got great businesses, not a lot of competition with those businesses, and they're earning money and they're paying out dividends and they're going to be around for a long time, but they're not growing very fast.
Yep.
And so you would see typically the price earnings ratios of those companies to be a little bit lower. And so again, these are just the basics, and it's something that I think that is important. And anytime I'm looking at an individual stock and discussing it with the client, and we're looking at an individual stock, I'm looking at that PE ratio and want to know if the value of that if the price is consistent with the actual value, and are we paying too much for it essentially? Also,
So you're looking at the PE ratio for the particular asset, and you're also looking at the sector that it's in and how well that particular sector is doing, and try to get that as specific as possible.
And drilling right down into its particular individual peers, other companies within that peer group, and what their PE ratios are, just to get a feel for whether or not. And it's just one measure; it's not the only, and it's not the thing that that determines whether or not you're getting a bargain, but it is a very good piece of information and a point to consider when making an investment in an individual individual stock. But I also wanted to talk a little bit about the overall market, and because you can put a estimate of value on the overall market. And why that's important is because generally, if the market is overvalued, eventually something has to happen. Either earnings have to grow to meet that expectation, or price has to come down in order to meet the reality of the earnings picture. So,
well, those principles are being challenged over the last 10 years or so.
They have.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of economists, stock market watchers, and analysts do look at PE in a little bit differently, and use what they call the PE10 or the Shiller PE, which is an average of earnings over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And they use it primarily for purposes of understanding where we are in the market and whether or not the market is overvalued or undervalued.
Right, because you could, if an outlying growth or an outlying loss in PE ratio could skew the number, so you want to look at it on an average basis to get a clearer view without taking the extremes out of it, basically.
And there's the inflation that is calculated into that as well. There's a lot of things that are factors to consider when understanding where we are in a market cycle, and understanding whether or not we are overvalued or undervalued or fairly valued.
Yep.
Right. And so a lot of people that make that determination, or that to make that assessment, they use the PE10, the Shiller PE. And so the mean for the Shiller PE is 16.89. The median is roughly 16. The minimum on December of 1920, or the lowest, let's say minimum, lowest was 4.78. And the highest, that, by the way, the lowest was December of 1920.
Mm-hmm.
And the highest was 44. And that was December of 1999.
Wow.
And if you recall what happened in March the following year, that was a pretty good indication that we were overvalued. Because what did I say? Either the earnings have to rise and to meet the expectation,
right,
or prices have to fall. Price earnings, right? It's a price earnings ratio, and we're looking at it on average. And so the Shiller PE ratio as of last Friday's close, was 38.77.
Yep. It's up there.
Actually, it's among the highest, and the highest it's probably been since the .com crash.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of experts that are using that as a indication that current market levels are overvalued compared to the underlying investment and the expectation of return on investment through earnings of those investments.
But we've been beating this drum for a long time now.
We have.
Yeah.
We have. But it is Lou, it is a reliable measure, because the bottom line is that when you make an investment in a company, you have a claim on the profits of that company. And ultimately, that's how you're going to make your returns. And so if the price that you're paying for that is more than it typically is, you might be paying too much. And
Yep.
Again, that's for individual companies, but you can also make that assessment for the market overall. And again, that's where we stand right now. I'm not saying that you should be acting on that information necessarily, but I think you need to keep it in mind when you're making your investment decisions and when you're coming up with your investment strategy. And I'll repeat what I've said for some time now. You really need a diversified approach. You really need to be you have to be careful not to be too over concentrated in the U.S. stock market, especially at current valuations. You need to be diversified, and you need to be looking at alternative investments that are not correlated with the traditional stock and bond asset class.
And one of the problems with staying diversified is that you involuntarily have a problem because of the growth in the market. Your allocations where you started or where you think you are might be different now because of the growth of the market.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And so one way to deal with that is just to look at your overall asset allocation, look at your asset allocation targets, and rebalance your portfolio to those targets. You might find yourself reducing your exposure to those growth areas, U.S. stock market, and putting it into other areas that haven't done so well. But that would be a good thing in the end, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Hey, look, so we just one more thing I wanted to mention, and that's this week's Talk Money tip, and it has to do with those contributions to 401ks that we talked about, and the maximum contribution that you can make. And I made the point that you can only make contributions to your employer-sponsored plan out of your wages, your paycheck. And it used to be that there was a percentage limit. So you could only put up to 15% of your paycheck into the 401k. They
Right.
changed that, and they allow you to put 100% of your paycheck, but really doesn't work out to be 100%, because putting money into your 401k doesn't relieve you of the responsibility to pay your FICA and Medicare tax.
Yep.
And so, or even your insurance premium for your health insurance. So, but it does allow you at this point in time in the year to look at your contributions to your employer-sponsored plan, compare it to the maximum that you could put away, $26,000 for someone's 50 or older, $19,500 for someone under 50, and take a look at the rest of the year, and maybe you're getting a bonus, or maybe you typically get a bonus in January. Maybe you can talk to your employer about accelerating that bonus into the current year, and then taking some of that money and maxing out your contribution to your 401k.
Good idea.
It all starts with taking a look at your last paycheck, take a look at the totals, how much money went into the 401k, and see how much you could afford to put away if you haven't reached those maximums. Because it's never a bad idea to add money to your retirement funds.
And
you never know what could happen, Lou. You could have hyperinflation. I know that's a foreign idea, but
It's getting less and less foreign as we go.
Let's-
And of course, all these strategies dealing with these types of things can be part of the initial no-cost meeting with you to get to know each other and see what Andover Advisory Group can do for you.
Exactly. Yes. Love to hear from you. Give me a call on the toll-free number, 877-475-2062, or send me an email. It's jeff@talkmoneyradio.com, or you could just send us a message right on Facebook. We would love to answer your questions and see if there's somewhere we can help you out.
Excellent.
So I guess that's it. I guess that's pretty much
That's it for today.
that's just about it for today.
Mhm.
I know we started a couple minutes late, but we're a couple minutes over, so that should work out, I think.
Nope. It's gonna work.
Yeah. So we'll be here next week, same time here on Talk Money. In the meantime, remember, good sound advice is much better than advice that just sounds good. Thanks, Lou.